There are many people on the right trying to claim that Antifa was leading the charge into the Capitol. I do not believe this is true. I've spoken with journalists. I've seen the video footage. And although there are some reports of leftists who were there, notably one guy who was previously arrested in Utah participating in a Black Lives Matter rally, this was Trump supporters. And some of the more fringe and ardent Trump supporters, many of them conspiracy theorists and QAnon types, some of them just like probably anti-government insurrectionist types. But while we talk a lot about the storming of the Capitol, one thing needs to be made clear. Many of the people were let in bewildered and confused. In one video, I tweeted, these cops should be charged as well. Why? The video shows Capitol Police standing by as the doors in one area of the Capitol building are opened, and they stand back and let the people come in. There's one officer who says something about disagreeing with it, but agreeing with the right to protest. I'm not sure if he's saying you can disagree with it, but you can't disagree with the right to protest, or if he said, I disagree with it, but agree with your right to protest. I'm not sure. Now, in this tweet, Christina Bobb, it's gone viral, says, Capitol Police open doors for protesters. They stand aside and invite them in. Well, I don't know if they opened the doors for protesters, but they're certainly not stopping these people from coming in. It could be that the police just gave up, said, come on in. It could be that the police did open the doors or that the police are cowards. But I tell you this, the one thing the cops could have absolutely done is stood in the way and said, no, they didn't. The group that's seen entering in this video, they're not raucous and smashing and shoving and screaming. In one video, so there's many different entrances to the Capitol. In one instance, you can see people shoving and yelling heave, and it's really crazy. There's a cop in one video being crushed, and he's screaming, and blood comes out of his mouth. That wasn't here, though. So many people are confused as to how it is that there were many people just walking through the Capitol building respecting the velvet ropes. Yet in other times, there were people seen taking things, well, I don't want to say destroying outright, but some things were destroyed. It seems like two different things were happening at the same time. I think there were a lot of Trump supporters who were let in, as you can see in this video and some other videos. And even the left has called this out. And there are questions about these police officers that I think conservatives and liberals want answered. Notably, how did this happen? Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to blow your mind because we talked about it a little bit in the past couple of days. But it seems now, based on a couple different reports, one coming from the New York Times, that due to the events of Black Lives Matter and the bad optics around those riots, they held back the police. No joke. They didn't want the National Guard coming out and doing what happened last time. You see, last time the National Guard and the military police came out and stopped this protest, Trump was heavily criticized for it. D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser did not want to have that on her, and it would seem said no to extra policing. Take a look at this story first from the Seattle Times. Backup was denied, former Capitol Police chief says. 2 days before Congress was set to formalize President-elect Joe Biden's victory, Capitol Police Chief Stephen Sund was growing worried about the size of the pro-Trump crowds expected to stream into the District of Columbia in protest. To be on the safe side, Sund asked House and Senate security officials for permission to request that the D.C. National Guard be placed on standby in case he needed quick backup. But Sund said Sunday they turned him down. In his first interview since pro-Trump rioters stormed the U.S. Capitol last week, Sund, who has since resigned, said his supervisors were reluctant to take formal steps to put the Guard on call, even as police intelligence suggested that the crowd President Donald Trump had invited to Washington to protest his defeat probably would be much larger than earlier demonstrations. It's too bad for Trump that many of his most ardent supporters believe conspiracy fringe nonsense and, to be honest, weren't smart enough to see what they were walking into. Now, as you can tell, if you've been following the news, most of the people who showed up that day, because there were hundreds of thousands, were not at the Capitol. I think there was a few thousand outside, and it was reported that a few hundred went inside. But all in all, there have been numerous journalists saying hundreds of thousands, at least 100, maybe 200. Some said even 500,000. I don't know about 500,000, but maybe it's possible. What ended up happening was some of Trump's most ridiculous supporters live streaming their way in made themselves look like idiots and particularly dangerous. But if you listen to what Trump was saying at the event, Trump said, let's go down now and cheer for politicians. He said that because Trump needed these people in Congress, these Republicans, to object. That was his best chance. And that was ended when these people bust through the doors and when the police let others in. So naturally, there's two conspiracies now. And pick your poison, I guess. On the right, there are questions about why it is the police let them in. And there's a belief, I suppose, that it was all on purpose to make the Trump supporters look bad. Yeah, sorry, I don't believe it. I think Trump supporters, for the most part, broke their way into the main front door, and then others walked in for whatever reason. I think it was just chaos. No one knew what was going on, and Trump supporters wanted to break in. I don't think there was a grand conspiracy among police officers. However, I do think, let me put it this way. The left also has a conspiracy that the police were all in on it. That's right. Why is it the police are seen opening the barricades, opening the doors? Because they are Trump supporters and they must be investigated. All right. The truth is closer to the middle. The reality is many of these cops probably didn't want the Trump supporters coming in. And some of them probably were confused, but, didn't really care or did support the president. There's one video people claim shows a cop waving the Trump supporters to rush in because you can see the cop fanning in the direction of the Trump supporters. I'm not convinced. I'm sorry. That's not evidence enough. He could be fanning at other cops. There were several layers of security and he may have been yelling at the cops. Come on. They're breaking in. We don't know. I think the reality is there were many cops confused. Some cops probably supported Trump. Many cops from other jurisdictions were off duty, actually came and were part of the group that made their way into the Capitol. And I think the left is weaponizing all of this to the best of their abilities for political power. So they're going to be claiming as much as they can that this was the end of days. AOC currently tweeting, half of Congress could have died. Calm down. The police were there. That is not likely, but I'll tell you this, it's possible. Some of these people were crazy, no doubt, saying, chanting hang Mike Pence. Some of these people had extremely ill intent because we know they posted it online. So it's a good thing the police were there, isn't it? Isn't it funny? I just got a question. Let's just sidestep. How is it that I'm one of the few people, like there's very few, personalities, commentators, reporters, journalists who are consistent on their opinions on policing. Should the cops be going around violating the Constitution? No. Should cops be destroying small businesses? No. Should Antifa be destroying small businesses? No. Should police be beating peaceful protesters? No. Are all cops bad? No. Should cops have defended the Capitol when people tried storming in? Yes. Absolutely. Which brings me to, some of the craziness. They say, House Sergeant at Arms Paul Irving said he was not comfortable with the optics of formally declaring an emergency before the demonstration. Sun said. Meanwhile, Senate Sergeant at Arms Michael Stenger suggested that Sun informally seek his guard contacts, asking them to lean forward and be on alert in case Capitol Police needed their help. Irving could not be reached for comment. A cell phone number listed in his name has not accepted messages since Wednesday. Messages left at a residence he owns in Nevada were not immediately returned. And there was no answer Sunday evening at a D.C. apartment listed in his name. A neighbor said he had recently moved out. Stenger declined Sunday to comment when a reporter visited his Virginia home. I really don't want to talk about it, he said. It was the first of 6 times Sun's request for help was rejected or delayed. 6 times. 6 times he wanted the police to be there. They didn't come. I think we now know. My friends, welcome to the New York Times. They report, looming over preparation was the government's heavy-handed response to the Black Lives Matter demonstrations over the summer. Mr. Trump had deployed unidentified agents and tactical teams to the streets of Washington in June against the wishes of Ms. Bowser, and agents tear-gassed protesters, allowing the president to walk to a nearby church and stage a photo op holding a Bible. In the run-up to the violence on Wednesday, the fractured relationship between federal and local law enforcement was evident. Ms. Bowser had sent a letter to top federal law enforcement officials on Tuesday warning against excessive deployments though the city had sought some National Guard troops for traffic control. She noted that the D.C. police had not requested additional personnel from law enforcement agencies for the rallies on Wednesday and referred to the aggressive deployment in June. Still, federal law enforcement officials conveyed to lawmakers that they were prepared. David L. Bowditch, the FBI deputy director, assured Senator Mark Warner of Virginia the top Democrat on the Senate Intelligence Committee, that the Bureau had the resources to handle the Trump rally. The Justice Department was treating the event as relatively peaceful, officials said. The acting attorney general, Jeffrey A. Rosen, working on Wednesday from his office rather than the FBI war room where the crisis response unfolded. Think about that for 1 second. What does that mean? Black Lives Matter rioted, and the media defended the riots in a sense. In many ways they did, like legit, straight up saying, well, you know, you have Cuomo saying, who says protests are supposed to be polite and peaceful? That kind of defense. But you also had the failed framing. When the riots happened, the enemy was the state. The media was mad at Trump. Trump was the bad guy. So the police were at fault. No fault was given, for the most part, to the rioters. Well, the optics were bad. So Muriel Bowser did not want a repeat and warned what would happen if there was excessive policing, even against Trump supporters. You gotta love it. This was entirely the fault of defund the police. That's right. Democratic politicians terrified of what will happen if they're seen as pushing or expanding the police state panicked and said, calm down. It'll be fine. We don't need the police. One of my favorite tweets someone put up was like, this shows, you know, exactly what we need. Actually, this is crazy. It was Matthew Iglesias, one of the founding members of Vox.com, a progressive site, saying what we learned from the Capitol is that we should get rid of all of the police and replace them with social workers. Bravo. But isn't it infuriating? Defund the police. And it is the fault of that extremism and that fecklessness and that fear and that cowardice from Muriel Bowser and other high-ranking officials in police and law enforcement. It is their fault this happened. Okay, now let me slow down. First and foremost, fault lies with those who actually perpetrated the acts. Absolutely. But when you have problems, okay, the fault lies with those we entrust with our security because the buck stops with them. Now, you can have a philosophical argument about where fault really lies. And yes, understand me when I say fault lies with those who stormed the Capitol. But you can't control what you can't control. There are crazy people who will do crazy things. Clearly, we blame them. They're being arrested. But when looking inward at our own system to figure out how this happened, who is at fault for the lack of security? Well, it's a combination of the ranking sergeant at arms of the mayor. And then it trails back at some point to this stems from defund the police. I don't blame defund the police. I don't. Lots of people have opinions, and a lot of people have opinions that are really dumb. And if you have politicians who take the dumb opinions and roll with them, and then we suffer because of it, I blame the politicians. Vote them out and get rid of them. Good. That you got these people who have resigned. Excellent. Glad to see it. The problem now is, what will they do next time? Are they going to ramp up policing? Is the right now anti-cop? Is the left now pro-cop? I wouldn't be surprised if we actually start seeing from this more pro-cop sentiment from Democrats, because they're already dancing around with it. After that whole summer of riots, here we go. Well, now the conspiracy goes deeper. You see, the left conspiracies are allowed to persist. The right conspiracies are purged. For example, on the right, okay, and I don't mean like general right wing or left wing. I mean like the fringe elements. You've got these conspiracy theories that never stop. Ugh. I can't tell you how many times I've seen posts where it's like, tomorrow's the day. The states will flip. The arrests are coming. Every single week since Trump got elected, there was some ridiculous conspiracy theory. Boom, bombshell. Mueller's actually working for Trump. They're going to arrest Hillary on Monday. Ugh, I swear. But I'll tell you what. Excuse me. You know, I don't care all that much about it because these people aren't working for TV stations. They don't have massive publications. These fringe conspiracy theories were never prominent among the right. Just among the fringe elements. On the left, the Russiagate stuff was the mainstream element of the left, going on TV, going on MSNBC and spouting this nonsense. Right now, there is a ludicrous conspiracy that a press release was put out, and then some hackers latched onto the API and were able to infect Parler and take admin access, and now they're going to publish all the IDs. Boom, boom, boom. Parler users, bam. We got your address. There is no verification for this. I'm not saying it's false, I don't know, but it's a rehash of an old story that was fake last time and is probably fake today. And people who have any technical expertise are looking at this going, that don't quite make sense. Just because a press release was put out and you got access to an API doesn't mean you could infect the entirety of Amazon servers. It's ridiculous. So it's probably fake. I reserve, maybe I can't prove a negative. So we'll see how that plays out. But the point is, these ludicrous conspiracy theories about the police secretly being in on it and letting them in, like as though they were part of the insurrection plot. Here we go, baby. This is allowed. This is mainstream. This is socially acceptable. Off-duty police firefighters under investigation in connection with U.S. Capitol riot. Now, this is where I draw the line, okay? There were reportedly off-duty police and firefighters from other jurisdictions. But beyond this point, this is where the line is, okay? Over the line is when they act like there are actually Capitol police officers that were holding back on purpose, hoping it would be the insurrection. Oh, please. You know what, man? The scary thing about this is that if there really was a legitimate insurrection attempt, it would have been brutal. These people weren't armed. They're like, they were armed. I guess they had crowbars, so it's fair to say they're armed, but they weren't walking around with guns. And that's what they're saying. When they say armed, people imagine weapons like guns. Well, there were reports of crowbars everywhere. Certainly people had a plan to break in. And that's coming from a reporter, Richie McGinnis, who was smeared by the New York Times when they claimed he was a rioter who punched the window, which he wasn't. I love it, though. Richie, who's a journalist, not particularly politically aligned, was there filming with press credentials. And in a photo from the New York Times, he's not wearing a shirt. And they're like, he's clearly a rioter. He's not wearing a shirt. I don't know why Richie took his shirt off. My assumption was that the initial reports was that he got a heavy blast of pepper spray. For those that aren't familiar, pepper spray sticks. He probably took his shirt off for that reason. I think later on he was wearing a vest, like a bulletproof vest. I'm not entirely sure. They're going to start investigating the off-duty officers that were actually there. And that's fair and that's important. I don't care who you are. If you broke in, investigation. But I bring up Richie McGinnis to prove a point. The New York Times claimed he was a rioter. He's not. They are taking photos of anyone and everyone and saying, find this person. The left is doxing random people. I saw a photo of a woman who is standing outside the rally and they're like, who is this? She's not even in the Capitol building. What are they doing? They're just going after anyone who was there. Yep. And that's when things get crazy because you had journalists. Elijah Schaffer of Blaze TV was briefly banned. And don't get me wrong, I mentioned this before. Elijah tweeted that it was a current revolution, which is, come on, bro, calm down. And he said that it was the people there who were calling it a revolution. Okay, fine. But they went after him. Elijah's a credentialed reporter. He has access to the building as far as I understand. He has legitimate credentials for the building. And so Facebook reinstated him. But the smear pieces and the hit pieces are coming out and they're accusing journalists of being in on it. This is the break in these people's brains. The right is being purged, but the same fringe conspiracy trash on the left is allowed to persist. No joke. And it's going to get crazier and crazier. Now, there's questions. Ashley Babbitt. The far left says in a protest that she deserved it. And that is sickening. It is disgusting. It is horrifying. This woman, I believe she served for 14 years in the Air Force, I think it was 4 tours of duty in Afghanistan and Iraq. She climbed up on a window and took a bullet to the neck and she died. Like you could, listen, man, when I saw that video and I saw what happened when she went down, I knew immediately she was dead. I remember a lot of people kept saying to me, because, we're having serious conversations like, no, she's in critical condition. I was like, no, she's not. She's dead. I understand she's in the hospital. I understand she's on life support. I'm telling you, it's done. People need to realize this. They talk about like so-and-so was hit by a car. 3 weeks later, he died. You can tell sometimes. I've been in situations similar. I've seen people get shot. I've seen bodies be carried away dead. I've seen it happen. And I saw that hit and I didn't think there was going to be a way out of it. She did not deserve for that to happen. But let me tell you something. Is it the fault of the officer for firing into the crowd and killing her? I do not believe this officer should face. Well, I don't think this officer should face criminal punishment. I don't know about administrative punishment or issues. Maybe we can have a conversation about that. But let me tell you something. The Washington Post. Video shows Capitol mob dragging police officer downstairs. One rioter beat the officer with a pole, flying the U.S. flag. Here's what you need to understand, my friends. There's videos of cops being dragged out and beaten. It's scary stuff. There were cops being blasted with pepper spray and hit. And this, I would only imagine this communications were being relayed to other Capitol Police. because they need to have an idea of what's happening. Or at the very least, officers who are under attack and calling for help may have been heard on their comms, whatever communication system they were using. So here you have Capitol Hill police, I believe it was a police officer, behind a door that's barricaded as people are smashing through the windows and the mob is coming. And he's trying to secure the chamber. I don't know exactly what area he was protecting. It was a big hallway, but there were people inside who talked about what happened. And he had to make a choice. An angry and violent mob is breaking their way through. Maybe he fired prematurely. Maybe it was poor judgment. Maybe he should have pulled back and waited until the door was actually breached. But I'm sorry, man, when cops are being dragged out and beaten and people are romping about through the Capitol and you're hearing these reports, whether any of the Trump supporters knew what was going on or not, you have entered a situation where you are in a secure facility of the U.S. government with armed guards and like tons of different rooms and police. I don't think these people realized what they were getting into. No, I don't think Ashley Babbitt deserved it. Not at all. I think it's a horrifying tragedy. I think people shouldn't have gone in the first place. How did Ashley Babbitt get in the building? Was it one of these groups where they opened the door and let him in? Or was it the main group where they pushed through the center door and knocked the police out of the way? I'm not entirely sure. I don't know. But I'm not going to blame the cop who was panicking as people started smashing the windows to break into a secure facility. It is a tragedy. It is horrifying. But I'm not going to throw out. We ask these officers to stand guard. We give them weapons equipped with lethal force and say, protect our members of government, even the ones we really don't like, because the alternative could be worse. And it probably is. So when you have security behind closed doors, windows being shattered, people breaking in, cops being beaten, and they fire, I don't find it to be criminal. I'm sorry. Maybe he acted improperly. Maybe it was, we can have an argument about administrative issues, but it's just tragedy, man. It's just scary. I don't know what the police were doing, letting people in. I know many of them came in and pushed people out. I just think this was one of the biggest security failures in the history of this country. And the Trump supporters who broke their way in, they have shown the world that the United States has a weak point. And right now we are extremely vulnerable beyond anything you probably realize, more vulnerable than we have ever been in history. If China wanted to launch an attack, I worry that they may use this opportunity. Trump is still president. The Joint Chiefs still obey Trump. They will not subvert him. That would be a military coup, their own words, even though Pelosi asked for it. So what would happen right now with our country in disarray if a foreign adversary attacked? We would be screwed. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 4 p.m. over at youtube.com/Timcast. It is a different channel from this one, so type in that URL, check it out, and I will see you all there at 4 p.m.